I chose to do my narrated PowerPoint on Empress Theodora. I chose Theodora because I was fascinated by her story and wanted to learn more about her and how she was one of the first rulers to fight for women's rights. To begin, I start with the early childhood of Empress Theodora. While little is known about Theodora's early life, sources say that Theodora was born in 500 AD in either Crete or Syria. The exact location of her birth is unknown, as much of Theodora's life is. Theodora was born to her mother, whose name is not recorded. Her mother was a dancer and an actress. Theodora's father, Acacius, was a bear trainer and keeper for the greens at the Hippodrome, which was a gigantic stadium where chariot races and other entertainment was staged. Theodora also had two sisters named Comedo and Anastasia. Comedo was the oldest sister, Theodora was the middle sister, and Anastasia was the youngest sister. Empress Theodora was born into one of the lowest classes of Byzantine society. Theodora grew up on the outskirts of the Byzantine Empire with her parents and two sisters. When Theodora was 4 years old, her father Acacius died. Her oldest sister, Comedo, was 6 years old at the time, and after the death of her father, Theodora began to work on stage as a mime with her older sister, Comedo. Theodora and her sisters were needed to help support her family at such a young age after her father's passing. After her work as a mime, following in her mother's footsteps, Theodora soon became a full-fledged actress. Although she was working to support her family, the profession of being an actress was considered scandalous, as being an actress was synonymous with being a prostitute. Before Theodora turned 17, she gave birth to two illegitimate children, a son named John and a daughter named Ionis. Her son John was turned over with custody given to his father. He and his father moved to Arabia, where John was raised. There is not information about where Ionis grew up or whom she was raised by. The fathers of Theodora's children are not known, and they were not a significant part of her life. In 1516, when Theodora was 16 years old, she traveled to Alexandria, Egypt, where she discovered the religion of monophysitism. Monophysitism is the belief that Jesus Christ was wholly divine. After this discovery, Theodora converted, rejecting her former career and lifestyle. You can see on the map I have in the right corner that Alexandria is on the Mediterranean Sea on the far north side of Egypt. Also, while Theodora was 16, she met a wealthy man named Hesebulus, whom she had a romantic relationship with. Hesebulus became governor of African Pentapolis, a minor province in North Africa. Theodora accompanied him to his new post. About 4 years later, Theodora was abandoned and maltreated by Hesebulus. After Theodora and Hesebulus' relationship ended, Theodora settled for a while in her hometown of Alexandria, Egypt, where she worked as a wool spinner. In 522 AD, Theodora met Justinian at Constantinople. Justinian was born in 482 AD to a peasant family, making him about 22 years older than Theodora. Justinian was a farmer's son from North Macedonia who traveled to Constantinople at age 11 to work for his uncle and Emperor Justin, who helped him in his rise to power and his eventual elevation to the throne. During this time, Justinian was heir to the throne and wished to marry Theodora after they formed a relationship and fell deeply in love. The current empress of the time, Euphemia, greatly opposed the marriage of Justinian and Theodora. While Euphemia opposed the marriage, an even larger issue stood in the way of the couple getting married. An old Roman law forbid an heir of the throne from marrying an actress, even one who had reformed. After Euphemia's passing the following year, Justinian had this law repealed. Justinian and Theodora married in 525 AD. After Emperor Justin, Justinian's uncle, died in 527 AD, Theodora was crowned Empress of Rome during the same coronation ceremony as her husband Justinian. After she married Justinian, Theodora had overcome her low-class birth. Empress Theodora and Justinian treated each other as intellectual and political equals. Throughout their reign, Theodora was responsible for much of the Reformation of Byzantium. In 528 AD, construction began on the Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna, Italy. The basilica was built as an imperial church on the outskirts of the Byzantine Empire. The basilica's mosaic, which was completed in 548 AD, depicts both the emperor and empress participating in an imperial procession, signifying Theodora's equal role and importance in ruling the empire. I have the image of the mosaic on this slide on the left side. You can see that in the middle is Justinian, and to his right is Empress Theodora. This is an image of the Basilica of San Vitale in Ravenna, Italy, which is still there today. You can see the Greek architecture in the middle of the white dome where the entrance or door is. In 532 AD, a religious conflict between the Blues and the Greens broke out during a chariot race at the Hippodrome and quickly grew into what is now known as the Nika Revolt. This revolt destroyed much of Constantinople. Many citizens saw this revolt as an opportunity to overthrow Justinian, who wished to flee the city. Consoling her husband, Theodora took control and spoke out, saying that she would prefer to die a ruler than to be removed from power. Theodora's courage prompted Justinian to send in troops to calm the rebels. After halting the revolt, Theodora and Justinian confronted the destruction of important monuments in Constantinople, including the original Hagia Sophia. Theodora and Justinian rebuilt the basilica, which was rededicated in 537 AD. The basilica was the largest church of the period and later became one of the greatest examples of Byzantine architecture. In this image, you can see the blues versus the greens during the Nika Revolt, which involved many people, where many monuments were destroyed and rebuilt. As I mentioned earlier, as one of my reasons for choosing to make this narrated PowerPoint about Empress Theodora, Theodora was one of the first rulers to recognize the rights of women. As one of her actions towards women's rights, Theodora fought for the persecuted. She attended to the rights of prostitutes in particular by closing brothels, creating protective safe houses, and passing laws to prohibit forced prostitution. Theodora also passed laws that expanded the rights of women in divorce cases. Using her power and influence to promote religious and social policies that were important to her, Theodora abolished a law that had allowed women to be killed for committing adultery. In addition for fighting for women's rights, Theodora also fought for religious rights. While she and Justinian did not have the same religious values, Theodora spent much of her reign trying to mitigate the laws against the Miaphysites. Theodora succeeded in ending their persecution in 533 AD, but she never succeeded in changing Justinian's religious policy from its emphasis on orthodoxy and friendship with Rome. As Monophysitism was Theodora's chosen religion, she felt very deeply and strongly for these actions and wanted to protect them in the best ways that she could. In her efforts to help the Monophysites, Theodora influenced the election of popes, provided refuge within the apartments of her palace for Monophysite leaders, and openly established a Monophysite monastery in Psyche directly across the Golden Horn from Constantinople. In 542 AD, Theodora even influenced Justinian to appoint a Monophysite bishop for the pro-Monophysite Arab client state of the Gauls. By such efforts, Theodora was able to keep alive the fire of the Monophysite heresy in the eastern provinces of the empire. During Theodora's reign, Constantinople was rebuilt and reformed to become the most splendid city in the world, and that the world had seen for centuries. Aqueducts, bridges, and churches were built and rebuilt during this time. The image in the lower left corner is an aqueduct. You can see again the Greek architecture with the dome buildings. The image to the right is an image of one of the many, many churches that she and Justinian oversaw the rebuilding of during their reign. Theodora passed away on June 28, 548 AD. Theodora would have been around 48 years old at the time of her passing. Historians believe that Theodora's death was likely due to cancer or gangrene. They aren't certain, as much of her life was a mystery to them. Theodora's death had a very visible impact on her husband Justinian. Justinian never remarried after her death. After a period of deep mourning, Justinian ruled Byzantium for another 17 years until he died on November 14th in 568 AD. Justinian would have been about 83 years old when he died in the imperial palace due to old age and natural causes. The image on the right is Justinian in the mosaic tile in the Basilica of San Vitale. When Theodora died, her body was buried in the Church of Holy Apostles. 17 years later, Justinian was laid to rest with her in the same church. After Theodora's death, Justinian sought to maintain the same level of freedom for women, setting a precedent for women's equality. Following Theodora's death, Justinian also fought for the Monophysites despite his own conflicting Orthodox beliefs. Theodora's importance in Byzantine political life can be demonstrated by the fact that little significant legislation dates were found from the period of her death and that of Justinian's in 565. Theodora's daughter, Ioannis, went on to have 3 sons after Theodora's passing, all of whom became prominent figures in Byzantine politics. Here I have a chronology of Theodora and Justinian. In 522 AD, Theodora and Justinian meet. In 525 AD, Theodora and Justinian get married. In 548 AD, Theodora passes away from cancer or gangrene. And finally, in 568 AD, Justinian passes away after ruling for 17 years after Theodora's death. Ten fun facts. Fun fact number 1. Theodora is a feminine given Greek name that means the gift of God or God-given. The name Theodora is found in many other honorable saints and queens' names throughout history. Fun fact number 2. Theodora wielded significant influence in political affairs. As I mentioned earlier, Justinian treated Theodora as his intellectual partner, and in doing so, Theodora was able to have a major impact on the political decisions of the Byzantine Empire. While Theodora was never made co-regent of the empire, many historians believe that it was she who ruled Byzantium, not Justinian. Theodora's name appears in almost all of the legislation passed during the period, and she received foreign envoys and corresponded with foreign rulers, which are roles typically taken by the ruler, who would have been Justinian. Fun fact number 3. Theodora shared the beliefs of the Byzantine elite before she became empress. An example of a common bond between the rich and the poor was a deep belief in the potency of magic, an art Theodora was associated with her entire life. The belief in the potency of magic typically means that one believes that unrelated events are connected, despite the absence of any link between them, particularly as a result of supernatural effects. This belief is much like a superstition. Fun fact number 4. Theodora can be described as an early feminist. She is one of the first rulers to recognize the rights of women. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, Empress Theodora took many actions to advocate for women's rights. A few of these actions include setting up safe houses for prostitutes, working for marriage and dowry rights, and championing anti-rape legislation. While Theodora did a great deal to help women and girls in need, she was also known to attack women of higher standing who threatened her position, including Empress Euphemia. Fun fact number 5. Empress Theodora is remembered for being one of the most, if not the most, powerful women in Byzantine history. The combination of Theodora's wit, political knowledge, advocacy for women's and religious rights left a very strong and memorable mark in history. Fun fact number 6. Theodora and Justinian have children together. This is false. As you probably remember, Theodora had 2 children prior to she and Justinian's relationship. Justinian had no children at all. Fun fact number 7. Under the rule of Justinian and Empress Theodora, the Byzantine Empire expanded to its largest geographical area. This is true. The area encompassing the Balkans to the north, Egypt and other parts of North Africa to the south, Anatolia, which is now modern-day Turkey, and the Levant, including modern Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan to the east, and Italy and the southern Iberian Peninsula, now Spain and Portugal, to the west. Fun fact number 8. Many of Byzantium's greatest architectural monuments, such as the domed Basilica of Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, were built and rebuilt during Theodora and Justinian's reign. This is true. Fun fact number 9. Following the Nika Revolt in 532 AD, Theodora and Justinian rebuilt more than 25 churches in Constantinople. This is also true. Fun fact number 10. Controversy regarding Theodora's personality. There is a considerable amount of controversy regarding Empress Theodora's personality. Procopius, a high official and historian, greatly disapproved of Theodora's personality and background. In Procopius's account of Theodora and his Secret History, he shows extreme dislike for her character, writing that Theodora was secretive and unfaithful. His characterization of Theodora can be attributed mostly to his own personal bias of her. On the other hand, an historian named Treadgold calls her a protectress of women as she used her influence to help them gain rights. Treadgold also describes Theodora as a protector of the poor and of the weak. Conclusion. Empress Theodora will forever be remembered for her courage, wit, and beauty. Her long-lasting impacts, not just on the Byzantine Empire, but on all of history, will be left forever. She will be remembered for her advocacy for women's rights, religious rights, Byzantium politics, and her effect on Emperor Justinian. I also wanted to note that one of the reasons that I picked her was because of her influence on Justinian. I haven't heard of any other emperor that has let a woman have such great influence on him and his empire. And as historians believe, Theodora was the ruler of Byzantium, not Justinian, as she dealt with most of the politics. As I said earlier, her name was on political envoys, and she corresponded with foreign rulers. Typically, this would be left to the ruler, Justinian, but personally, I think that Empress Theodora had more control over the empire than Justinian did.